struck a great bit of luck here because I'm with the author. So any questions that I can't answer.
And I'm just going to give him the answer, then he gets to say them. Because let's face it, we always want to listen to him talk a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Well, this is a question I have for Jazz. I saw you in 2015 when you were on your Book of Life tour in Ann Arbor. And at that time, I know that you were in the beginning of this process of creating the show. And here we are 3 years later. So this must be a really fantastic sort of full circle-ish type of moment. So can you talk a little bit about the process of getting this series made, and how has it been for you behind the scenes?
Well, you know, it's interesting. When I write, I do see it in my head. I sort of see things happening in my head and I write them down. And so I always sort of felt like I didn't feel like I needed to have it as a film or a television show, and that if it was ever going to be made, it needed to be made by the right people, with the right cast, with the right kind of spirit behind it, because I just didn't want it kind of stripped down to its bare bones and then rebuilt into something else. And you know, a lot of people might say that, but I'm a teacher, so I asked lots of hard questions, and it became pretty clear pretty early that, you know, a lot of people wanted the storyline. They wanted Diana and Matthew and sort of Forbidden Love, so they could do something else entirely. And I wanted to tell, if they were going to buy it, I wanted them to tell the story. So it's been just amazing, and just to sort of see it come to life, and to really go through that hard work. And it is really hard to take a book and make a good adaptation. That is not, I think it's probably harder than doing something from the ground up.
Well, I would think that. I wanted to ask you that, because the book is very much seen through the eyes of Diana, you know, as she experiences the world. Of course, when you then create a television series, you have to take those worlds that only exist when she's with them, and you have to give them their backstory and their life, so that they have the integrity of wherever we go. We have to set up their stories before she sees them in a way, because you don't have unless you're going to do what you call like a voiceover narration going on. So that's extraordinary amount of work.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to unpick it.
So one of the things that we did was because it is all told from Diana's point of view, was to realize that what was everybody else doing on Friday night? Where was Peter Knox on Friday night when she pulled that book out? And so it was about just taking the story and then just sort of inching it out. And where was Marcus? Where was Matthew? How did that all fit together? And then once that happened, you could enter it from all of these different places and pick up. So we get to see sort of the stories of all those people who we only ever see through Diana's. We actually get to see them through their own experiences and their own eyes. So it's been pretty fun, because I knew all that stuff, but it wasn't on the page because I had to know that. But to see them all kind of go there and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what we're doing. It's really great. I had to kind of scream out in the corridor, because it suddenly hit me like, oh my God, this is happening.
It's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Congratulations.
Did you whisper all those scenes to the?
No, I mean, I said to them, well, you know, when Diana is in the Bodleian and she picks up the book, you know, Jillian is somewhere. Knox is somewhere. Everyone is somewhere in the story, and they have to kind of converge. So what is that story that we're going to tell them? Now, if they come to me and said, well, Peter Knox is in the Bahamas captaining a boat, I would have been like, okay, let's rethink that. But, you know, they have
good
a pretty
idea.
good...
I like that idea. Run with that.
They have a pretty good, you know, grasp of the characters, and so they were very close to something that I would have imagined.
Can you talk about the casting of Teresa? What went through your mind when you heard were you active in it? Is this how you thought she'd look?
In the case of she looks exactly like she's described in the book, right down to the crazy wild eyes. And so you know, when she walked, I thought, oh, this is too good to be true. There's just no way. And she's so articulate, and she is so like her in so many ways, in terms of her fierceness and her courage and her sense of fun when you're on set. And so for me, with all of the cast members, it just there was once they said, what about so and so for the part, you know, when they said, I want to say, okay, he's never going to do this. He'd be fabulous. He's never going to do it. And they said, well, we think he might. And so it's like, oh my God. All the characters are just so on point for who they're playing. All the actors, the characters, and you just kind of got in their skins.
Well, you have to, I guess, you have to give it over. It's that thing. It's your child, and then you've had to just give it over to a team of creatives, and then they, in a way, have to give it over to the actors, you know, and at each point of collaboration, you can fall out and fall in and fall out, and in a way you have to, you know, to make that so that you don't get stuck at any point, you don't belabor it, but you do have a very healthy, vigorous debate. And I then, you know, personally, I then have the right to say, well, I'm going to stick up for Peter Knox.
Right.
You know, I'm not taking an overall view anymore. You know, that bit's done, and I'm in. So I'm going to give this guy the best possible ride that I can give him, and let that provide drama. Therefore, that's an element that you can bring in.
Well, that was one of the first conversations we had, was when you said to me, I have a few questions to ask, and they were all about sort of his integrity and what he believed and what he felt. And again, as the author, I came up with all of them, right? So, and none of them are 100% wonderful. So it was really important to me that the actors not want to smooth out all of their rough edges and make them unbelievable, right? I don't want to watch that on television.
No.
I want people who I can think, oh God, I felt that way. I've totally felt that way, and be able to kind of go from there.
One of the big things for me was, which we mentioned just now when we were doing a panel on it, was that they never lose their connection, however their powers vary. You know, within the witch world, for instance, Teresa is phenomenally gifted, what she's been given, and however much that goes on, it never loses its connection with what it means to be alive as a human being. And so it's relatable, whatever they do. They're like super human beings, not just arbitrarily fantastical monsters, but they are treated as such, and that's why they hide in daylight by the human race. I guess what I'm alluding to in a long way is I love the fact that you can see the parallels. It means something to be alive today. It's all in the show. When that was, you know, for me that's it. My hand is, I go, yeah. Compared to a lot of stuff that has come in, and you know, for playing a character like I did in Thrones, and having been deemed to have made that successful, to be a bad guy, as it were, you know, and to take the flack of that, it's going to be quite easy, you know. I get asked to play a lot of mean characters, is basically what I'm saying, but this one really has an integrity, and therefore you need that, and that will bring about drama, and I'm, you know, with relish look forward to the next stage of the journey.
Yeah.
Getting a little Hollywood wonky. There's like the 4 quadrants of like older and younger men and women. This is a show that primarily kind of appeals to older women, which is a neglected quadrant, I think, especially in the high fandom communities like sci-fi and all of that. So how do you feel being now part of that, like with Outlander, and like it's pretty much just Outlander that I can think of?
Well, you know, what I'm always struck by is that there seems to me, just on a very superficial kind of sense, that there's a lot of movies about women in their 20s, and there are a lot of movies about women having like nervous breakdowns in their 40s and 50s, and there's very little about women in the middle part, you know, in their 30s, who are. And so I teach 18 to 21-year-olds who I hope go on to have a really, you know, rich and wonderful life past the age of 21, and maybe don't have a total midlife crisis at 45 where their whole life comes apart. So for me, I was like, let's focus. I loved being in my 30s, you know. You had the sense that you kind of knew something, but you had a long time to look forward to ahead. And I thought, why don't we explore that more? So what's interesting, of course, is to remember when the first book came out in 2011. That was 7 years ago. Some of the people who started reading this book when they were 33, Diana's age, are now 40. And I kind of thought, because I don't write super fast, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to tell people's stories in various stages of life, to have people who are in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, because every stage brings something new to it. So I don't even think of it as being something that's about sort of women of a certain age, but more just really reflecting the kind of wonderful diversity that exists through age as well as in other ways. I think that's kind of a level of diversity we don't often think about. If you're 30, do you have a really close friend who's in their 70s who's not your mom? Because it might really enrich your life if you did. And maybe is that the historian in me talking? But you see what I mean?
It is. No, it's good. It's rich stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a big thick seam that we're mining that through you, and that maybe not a lot of people are putting those elements together. Whether I think that as an industry, whenever anything becomes an industry, you look to what's going to sell. There's a commercial aspect. So if something's been done already and it worked, you can see, well, let's jump in there and just redo it and change the names, and that I don't think that works anymore. I like the fact that there's a greater diversity in platforms. I don't understand it all. Streaming services, I don't get me started. But the fact that, like the BBC, it's a big thing now. It's come out that the average age of the people who are watching the BBC is up to about, I think it's 55 or 60, because now in the UK. We have to pay what's called a television license. It's a state-run thing, and that goes to the BBC. So that is there as a service to the people. But increasingly, it's having to fight now in a marketplace with commercial streaming services. And at the moment, they've really altered the world. But I think that's good. It's shaken the whole thing.
I think has brought a whole lot of diversity, and I think if what comes out of it is that people take women between the ages of 30 and 45 more seriously as a market that needs to be paid attention to and engaged with, I am totally thrilled to think if the Discovery of Witches helps to make that point. I think often the market is pitched to different constituencies, and that's not that it's bad, but I would love to think that there was something that was on television that was like, this speaks to me and my life and where I am,
and you've got a great lesbian relationship in it, and they're not stigmatized for that. They're just real people. It's not an issue. It's like, oh, this is a big thing. How are they accepted? Because they're witches as well. It's great.
And a lot of readers will come up to me in signings and events and say, "Thank you so much for having gay and lesbian characters where their sexuality isn't the thing that makes them important to the story."
Yeah.
And you hear that and you just think, wow, oh yeah, that thank you, I just was fascinated in them, but I love it if it speaks to these bigger issues. I think that it's a win for everybody.
Yeah, so we talked about the age issue, but you think that the LGBT couple will also attract that audience to the show as well?
Well, George Takei certainly seems to think so, but I don't know, because I think I'm one of those people who just believes that people find the things regardless of their gender, their race, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity, their class, whatever. They find the stories that speak to them. And it was always my intention to write a story that felt like the world I live in, which is diverse and which has lots of different people from lots of different places. And I don't always see that embodied on the screen in a way that makes it seem like this is what people's real lives look like. And I just really wanted to do that. So I hope that they like it. I hope that they come along and fall in love, as I think the people in the audience at the panel did with. Did you just totally fall into? She was just like, can I come over and hang out in your house? And the banter was, I mean, it's hard not to want to do that.
So in a way, your show, when the book is educational, if people can experience these lives in a way they haven't experienced it before, that's beautiful.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Well, it's all about, I'm a historian, so what I do is I try to teach empathy.